before mandatory SCBA stuff kind of took off, because what would happen is typically our officer would do exactly what you just said. They would go in and recon. They would find the room of the fire, and then while their members are masking up on the front porch, they would then come out and say, hey, down the hallway to the right, 2 rooms on your left-hand side. And then that's how that engine company would then go straight to the fire.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, that exposure leads to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip. To learn more, visit magnagrip.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Main Street Firefighting, a podcast by Fire Engineering. My name is Lex Shady, and with me is my co-host, Chris Tobin. Before we get started, we'd again like to thank Fire Engineering for the opportunity, and you all for tuning in. Tonight we're joined by Lieutenant Steve Robertson with the Columbus Division of Fire in Ohio. You're probably familiar with Steve from his training organization, Stretching for Success, and his mini classes on all things engine companies and stretching. We really enjoyed this conversation with Steve. Every time we get a chance to talk, we learn something new. We had the opportunity to pick Steve's brain on all things hose, nozzles, stretching, and of course, old buildings. We hope you enjoy. Thanks again, Steve, for joining us this morning. Appreciate you taking your time. For people who don't know you, can you give us just a little bit of rundown of kind of your history on the department, where you work, kind of your career so far, that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah. First and foremost, Chris, Lex, thanks for having me. Always enjoy our conversations, and now we just get to have one with everybody. But Steve Robertson, I'm a lieutenant in Columbus, Ohio Division of Fire. I'm the company officer at Engine Company 18 in the South Linden district of Columbus. A little bit about Columbus. A lot of people don't realize how big it is. We're a little over 1 million people now. We got a little over 1,800 firefighters. Pretty busy. We do 700 runs a day in the city, so it's a pretty good thing. I started the fire service way back in 1988. I used to say to a lot of the kids, I was waiting on water when you were waiting on the bus, but now most of those kids weren't even born, so I can't even say that anymore. But they, I just had a great career. I've been very blessed. Came through the ranks. I started at Engine 2, did a little truck time on Ladder 1. Did a little time on the ambulance there for a year, got forced over to that thing for a year. Wasn't terrible. Just learned a lot. And then from there, went back downtown to Engine 2 again. And then I went down to the track, got promoted down there. And then I got promoted in 2002 and ran the training academy for 3 years, recruit training as part of that cadre. And then been Engine 18, and I've been there ever since. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Cool. Can you describe what kind of buildings you typically respond to for fires? Yeah,
we've got a little bit of, I'm in a very diverse district. It's a very low income area. So I have everything from projects, old school projects, to new build projects, to single family dwellings, 2.5-story frames, balloon frames. I've got some modern builds. And we've got a lot of taxpayers. We have taxpayers all the way up and down Cleveland Avenue. My second due district is just as unique. I'm second due to the Ohio State University.
Okay.
So when we get over there, it is absolutely Main Street USA. When you go up High Street and some of the other main thoroughfares through campus, a lot of older buildings. They're remodeling a lot of them into mid-rises, but there's still a lot of old taxpayers that, you see a street elevator, and there's a tunnel that runs the full block underneath these things, underneath the sidewalk, where they, drop off all the goods, and they got access to every business through that tunnel. So common cocklots, the whole length of the block. It's very diverse, unique, and we get a little bit of everything. Manufacturing, I got a ton of manufacturing over there. Why? The land was cheap when they built, right? So you get a little bit of everything. So I'm kind of blessed to have that unique district for sure. Yeah,
that's cool. So what kind of response do you guys get, like truck-wise, manpower-wise, to the fires?
So what we're going to get is 3 and 2, 3 engines, 2 ladders, and you're going to get a heavy rescue, a battalion chief, and a medic initially. That's the initial box that goes out. When it becomes a working fire, then you'll get an additional engine ladder as the RIP team. And then you also get an additional chief, safety officer, and the rescue supervisor also comes.
Okay. Do you guys run 4 or 3 on your trucks?
It depends. It depends. We've got a unique situation now where truck companies are now at 4, 24 hours. It's not written anywhere, but they're really trying to maintain that staffing. Engine companies that run more than 3,000 runs a year, they're trying to keep staffed at 4, 24 hours. If you're one of those, not slower, but you don't meet that criteria, what they're doing now is, and it's happened for years, it's gone on since, well, after the John Nance fires when it was put into place. After 2,000 hours, they require 4 people on a fire truck, period.
Wow.
That was put in place after the Nance fire. They were running with 3 at night, and, John was riding out of class when that happened. So now they require a company officer at night and also a 4-person staffing at night.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty proactive to keep up with that. So Steve, I wanted to ask you, I know we've been teaching together indirectly and directly for a long while now. I can't even remember when we met each other.
I think we were up with Rusty Ricker up northeast somewhere. Weren't we doing that? Weren't we doing New England Fools?
It might have been then.
And you picked me up in Boston. You picked me up. I rode up with you guys from Logan.
Man, I feel like I knew you before that, but
I might have.
Either way, I don't remember picking up any strangers there, but yeah, I do remember the ride coming and going though. Anyways, I definitely remember taking your classes, and one thing that stuck out was, like, this is a guy who hasn't retired and is teaching stuff that he did, and he's not a chief who's riding a buggy, teaching what he used to know. This is someone who's teaching what they still have to do. And I thought that was why your material resonated so greatly with the class overall. But then I could immediately take what you're saying and use it 5 minutes from then, right? So
yeah, and I appreciate that. I've always tried. I teach what I do, and I try not to embellish on it. Now, there's some things that I've got a lot of theory. Knowledge without experience is theory, right?
Yeah.
I got a lot of theory, and I can tell you we've thrown a lot of things against the wall. And guess what? The majority of them don't stick.
Sure.
They don't stick. But maybe you still have the problem. That doesn't mean the problem goes away. That means you keep throwing stuff at the wall and you work till you find a solution. And I think that's why I'm blessed with the guys I work with on Engine 18. They're not scared to go out and put hose on the ground or try something new and work to the solution. The problem doesn't go away, right?
Right.
I mean, we worked and worked and worked on this mid-rise stuff. Well, guess what? We figured out a way we could put 200 or 300 or 400 feet of 1 3/4 hose in the stairwell on the fire floor.
Sure.
Happened overnight?
And that's I think it says something.
It doesn't happen overnight, though, right?
Right.
But when you fail together, that's okay. Because when you finally succeed, man, you watch the crew when you figure it out and you get it right. It's like I don't know. It's a euphoric moment for the entire crew when you figured out something that's going to work, that's going to make the job easier, to make you more efficient on the fire ground.
100%. I think it's awesome that you guys approach performance and enhancing training with a problem. You're solving a problem, right? Like in this case, it was just a mid-rise objective that you had.
Right. So I don't want to go down the mid-rise path, but the biggest problem you're going to have with those, and it's just kind of similar, but it's not to the Main Street USA, is folks are going to default. If there's a standpipe, they're going to default to the standpipe.
Sure.
The problem you're going to have is you may have a 300, 400 foot hallway.
Right.
Just carrying 400 feet of hose up there on a high rise.
Yeah.
In their high rise pack.
Right. Totally.
So then they're going to be short, and then they're going to try to extend. By the time they even get more hose up there to try to extend in a dirty hallway, which most of the time doesn't go well.
No.
I can tell you that from experience. Sounds good, right?
Right.
Looks good on paper. But I can tell you from experience, most of the time that doesn't go well. It's into the attic space, and then what happens with the cock loft?
Yeah.
And we're getting pulled out of there before we even get good water on the seat of the fire.
Yeah. Totally. Like, and once again, like, those are things, like you said, looks good on paper, but until you've done it and seen it actually perform in real life, that's when you get the full picture, right? But
Yeah, but it's even in your taxpayers. If you're short, everybody forgets about that reflex time to go get more things.
Sure.
Like I can maintain the space I have, but I'm not moving forward. And if you're not moving forward, the fire is. What's that reflex time of going down 3 stories or 2 stories, going back to the rig, get either another bundle of hose or pulling 50 feet, shoulder loaded, and then trying to get past everybody that's packed into the stairs to get to the end of the nozzle to extend.
And you just brought up a good point. I was going to say, you said the S word. So think about where the stairs are at, and a lot of these taxpayers, by a taxpayer we're meaning, a mercantile first floor, and then residential for the upper floors, maybe 2, 3, 4 stories above that. The stairs could be, you don't know is the correct answer, right?
You don't know.
You don't know.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
So what's going to be quicker? You trying to figure that out, like you said, under conditions, or maybe throwing a ladder to that floor and a line over a ladder?
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to that, but I caution folks as a go-to initially.
Sure.
And that's the main reason is exit time.
Absolutely.
If things go sideways, how many people can I dump out that window?
Correct.
Right? Yes,
right.
I know all the save your own stuff. I get it. I'm not saying it doesn't work. All I'm saying is be very cautious when we have to do that, because you're really limiting egress. Your truck companies better be Johnny on the spot with ground ladders if you're going to make that as a choice. My thing is recon the fire. We pull up to these things, and what's the first thing that happens as soon as the air brake hits? Off comes 200 feet, inch and 3/4 hose.
Yeah, lines are pulled. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
That's what happens. It's not right. It's not wrong. We don't even know where we're going in yet. Why are we stretching lines?
Right.
Is this the best point of entry? I mean, you go all the way back to my Stretching for Success class, the 5 keys to a winning engine, right? Positioning the apparatus correctly the first time,
mm-hmm.
selecting the proper size and length of the hand line, the proper entry point. If we stretch to the wrong place and those stairs don't go where you think they go, what happens now?
Yeah, it's not good.
You might as well drop that line and start
over. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, good luck putting those dots together when it's happening, right? So.
Right. And by the time you've committed to that, it's too late. You've already committed. So the recon on these things, I think, is as important as anything we do, is getting into these buildings. And again, like you said, knowing what stairwells go where.
Sure.
And you got to, who's the best person to ask that?
Oh, obviously the people who live there.
Standing in the street.
Yeah.
The guy standing in the street that lives there. Where do these stairs go? You see what I'm saying? Totally. Simple questions of don't look past people. They may have the information you need to be successful.
So Steve, now when it comes to recon and stuff, that's traditionally a truck company duty, right? They're going to try to open it up, try to find those hose line pathways, and then come hopefully report to the engine officer. But I don't know how you guys run there. There may not be a truck company on scene with you. So engine companies,
single engine. So my closest truck's 4 to 6 minutes away.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that leads into this is, you got to know who's supposed to be on that assignment with you. Who's on that card with you, right?
Yeah.
If I hear engines 18, 7, and 16 with trucks 13 and 8, I know I'm going to have a truck within 4 to 6 minutes. Okay. And the other one's going to be right behind it. If I hear engines 18, 1, and 9, trucks 1 and 2, guess what? That 4 to 6 just minutes is probably went to 6 to 8.
Sure.
Right. So because the other 2 trucks that normally run to my district aren't there. So I'd have to tactically plan for that hold on, we're not going to get the ground ladders as fast as we want to. We're not going to get the search as fast as you want. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So that makes placement and positioning and the recon even more important, I believe, when you don't have your normal assignment. But you got to pick up on that as a company officer, that slow down, take a half a step back and look at it. You got to make really good decisions at that point, because your help isn't right behind you.
Are you guys sending your engine company officers in like ahead of the line to do a little bit of that recon, or are you relying on knowing that building?
I'm ahead of the line. That's just the way I was taught.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of company officers that do that much anymore.
Okay.
And the division really, they don't tell me no, but they don't necessarily say yes on that.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So
it's one of those things like, if I think I need to go ahead of the line to find the fire to make sure this is the right way to go, I'll do that. I don't have a problem doing that.
So
is that something they really endorse? Probably not.
So
Does that make
Steve,
sense?
Yeah.
That's something that we call the forward officer, and I tell you what, I think it wasn't it was a normal across the board thing before mandatory SCBA stuff kind of took off, because what would happen is typically our officer would do exactly what you just said. They would go in and recon. They would find the room of the fire, and then while their members are masking up on the front porch, they would then come out and say, hey, down the hallway to the right, 2 rooms on your left-hand side. And then that's how that engine company would then go straight to the fire.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, that exposure leads to cancer. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip. To learn more, visit magnagrip.com.
And then the officer might say, oh, by the way, there's a hole, right here. Don't obviously avoid that hole.
Yeah. I mean, any of that information, it's pertinent. But I mean, a lot of this is you're shooting blind. You don't really, and as much as good information, like I said, you can get from occupants. Those same occupants can give you the bad dope too.
Sure.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
There was a fire out west, and the guy came out and said it's in the basement. Well, what do? They didn't really look at it as well as they probably should have. And what did they do? Everybody ran where?
The basement?
To the basement. Guess what happened? Fire wasn't in the basement. Fire was on 1.
Yeah.
Had victims on 2. And it just turned into this roller coaster of, okay, we're down here. We're not finding any fire at all. You got people committed to 2 doing search and pulling people out, making grabs. Yet the fire's on 1 and no one has addressed the fire. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Okay, it's not here, but we're not gonna move anything to that point. Well, when you have that, and I think this is important, especially in these buildings, what is the backup line's job?
Well, it should be.
What is the primary job of the backup line?
That's so that, I mean, that question. That's
holding the stairs, providing no egress.
Yeah, it's to protect the egress of the first line, right? Protect the egress. So if that situation happens like that, that backup line can now what?
Yeah,
it can go to 1 and take care of what?
Maneuvering in place.
Take care of that. Right. The problem we run into is guys think they have to be so aggressive, and aggressive, I don't like that word. I don't know why. I just think it's an overused word now that really, I don't know. What is aggressive? What's that mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
sure.
I'm an aggressive fireman. What the hell does that mean? Tell me what that means.
It can, in a subjective context,
I'm angry? Does that mean I'm angry all the time? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't get it. But I would rather call you a forward fireman, that you're moving forward on something,
Uh-huh.
But the backup line's primary job is to protect the egress of the first line. And if we're not supporting the first line, we're in trouble. Sure. That second due engine, yes, water supply, all that. Yes, get a backup line down, but you have to support the first line. If the first line's not moving forward, that backup line doesn't mean a gosh damn thing. It means nothing. Right. That means you got a backup line to sit there and watch them get their butts kicked. If that means I got to break you pull the backup line, get your mask on, go start moving hose at the door. That's the first thing I look at when I pull into a fire.
Yeah.
Is what's the condition of the smoke? If I'm second, what's the condition of the smoke? What's happening? I know if they're hitting it or not, we know that pretty quick, don't we?
Right.
And number 2 is I look at the first line. If it's not putting water on the fire and it's not moving forward, I commit a body right then, first, right out of the chute. Go start moving hose. Go start moving hose right now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like go. That is your primary job at that point, is to go support the first line and keep it moving forward.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people make the mistake of, well, there's slight nuances between backup line and second line, right? And
I don't think it's slight. I think it's very split, Chris. And I tell you why. The backup line's job is not to follow the first line. If you need a second line, that's a second line.
So, and I don't know how your SOGs are written. Ours are very ambiguous to where that second line can operate as a backup line, but it can also then be a second line because, well, there's 2 floors of fire, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they have to know both roles. They have to know when to operate as a backup line and when to operate as a second line, because we expect a third line to come off here in a second. So that's all I think that's all endemic local firefighting. Sure, you can teach that on a national scale, but it would be really tough to come home and implement some of that stuff if you're in a certain way.
No, I'm not saying go change your SOGs. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is when you arrive second due, you still have priorities to put that line down.
Yeah.
I just don't agree necessarily with that line following the first line.
No.
How many guys have you ever misread a fire when you pulled in?
Oh, we all have. Yeah, absolutely.
The fire was on 2 and it's really on 1.
Yeah.
And now you have 2 lines committed to 2 and you don't have a third line down and somebody breaks a window.
Sure.
Now you've got 2 companies above the fire.
Yes.
That's not going to turn out well.
It's not good. So
it's all positioning of the line and doing your job.
So
right? I don't need to do your job. You don't need to do mine. I just need to do my job. And when those things are in place where they should be, good things are going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yes, so I guess the big takeaway from that is the lines aren't, and we fall into this too, especially when you have 2, like you would call forward engine companies that are rival companies. Yeah, like it turns into like a competition, like who can get the water on the fire the quickest. And that's not tactically correct.
Yeah, and not only not tactically correct, I call that a weak boss.
Sure.
That is a weak company officer. If you don't have the gumption to keep your folks task oriented for their job, what are you doing?
Yeah, there's no discipline.
You're not helping anybody. How can I try to go take 16's fire every time? And then when they come to 18's district, how can I expect that company officer to not try to do the same thing?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? No one's going to do. That's what I mean by do your job. If my tasks are second due, nobody wants to be in that fire more than I do. But guess what? Maybe that's not the best thing. Like a second floor job. This is the same thing on your taxpayers. How many people can we put in that stairwell?
Yeah, not many. I mean, quite honestly, there shouldn't be anyone in the stairwell. There should just be hose lines.
But what happens?
Everyone log jams the stairwell. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's standing there breathing air on the stairs.
Yeah.
As a second due engine boss, I may send a guy to the landing or to the top of the stairs just to move hose. And then I stand there and I have my arm across that at the base of the stairs with the backup line. And I stand there and I let 2 truck guys by. I let 2 rescue guys by.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm on the truck. We'll go up a ladder.
So
you're not going to stand on my stairs.
And that's the thing is, so we try to make it, coming from a rescue company, is we try to make it a point, unless we are assigned to moving line, which is a rescue function, right? We're guests at fires. So if the first line needs to get in place, we're going to be chasing kinks. 2 of our members are going to be chasing kinks. And now the rest of us who are doing search, we don't take the stairs for that unless it's another stairwell that's clear. We're going to throw ladders, and because that's why, to get out of your way. And then when we find a victim, guess what's not clogged now? The stairs.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a smart guy. I'm really not. I just try to be more common sense oriented to these things. And when you look at it, Chris, where are your just take a dwelling. When I got on the job, the ladder company, the truck company's first ladder always went to the porch roof.
Okay.
The driver got out. He threw a straight ladder straight to the porch roof. The 2 inside truck guys, guess where they went? Up that ladder, through those 2 windows.
Sure.
Every fire.
Yeah.
And guess what? We didn't call it VES, but it happened every fire.
Right. It's
everybody goes, can we do this? We did this every fire. It literally went to the porch roof, and you went through those 2 windows. You searched those 2 rooms. If it was tenable, you kept going. If you didn't, you came out. That was it.
It's funny too. So take that same crew. All right. Different house fire. And then someone's remodeled the stairs and they're not there anymore. Like they're just gone. Yeah. And then think about what happens if that's all you know is stairs, and then now there's none. Yeah. Think about how that reflex time and then those guys they haven't missed a beat. They're like, we never use the stairs anyways. So this isn't even a problem for us. Yeah.
Right. It's not a thing.
And then the other thing, and this is something that you just don't know until the fire teaches you the lesson, which is guys bailing off the second floor. What's better? Do you want to go crowd surfing over 6 guys on the stairs, or do you want to have a clean stairwell to go tumble down when you're really trying to get off the second floor?
It's just discipline. And it's company officers being company officers again. Do guys get upset with me when I say no? Absolutely. I understand. But I look right at them and I go, if that was you up there, how many people do you want up there?
Right.
How many do you truly need? You got 2 or 3 off the first engine. You got 2 off the rescue, 2 off the truck. Maybe 3 off the truck. You know what I mean? Or 3 off the rescue.
Yeah. I mean, and that
depending on staffing.
That pays dividends in the safety. And then, like you've been in some of the same types of buildings we are with the lack of they're neglected. So think about it.
They're tired.
Right. Less people on the floor is a less load on the floor. Less people falling through floors. Right. So that's another thing you get out of that too. I mean, you're not putting 9 or 12 guys up there pulling ceiling on a crap floor. Well, I only need 4, and then when they're gassed, we'll replace them with 4 more. But the last thing we need, the last thing we need to do is shock load the hell out of this crap building we're in. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I agree with that 100%. And I think here's the other thing: we get so much water thrown on a lot of these buildings that we forget they're tired.
Yeah.
These buildings are tired. They're tired. Last summer before. Station 8 had one, and literally just some of the guys laying in bed. The building just fell. The whole half of the building fell off. It wasn't raining. It wasn't anything. It just got tired and said, I quit. And I think you're going to start seeing more of that from these old taxpayers that have been built in the 1800s, early 1900s, and they're just stinking tired.
Yeah.
Everybody talked about the fire in Baltimore, right? Like, they should have been in there. They shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have done this. When I look at vacant buildings, especially taxpayers or row homes, there's one thing I tell my guys. Everybody saw that fire. Everybody saw the fire. That's all they saw. They shouldn't have been in there. Well, hold on a minute. I've been in plenty of vacant fires, right? Plenty. That was the majority of my work for a long time at 18. The one thing I look at going into a vacant before I do anything is it open to the weather?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Right.
Are the windows open? Is there a roof on it? Is there not a roof on it? Because Mother Nature is absolutely brutal on these buildings that are wide open. That is the first red flag for me on these taxpayers that are vacant. Are the windows open? Are there cracks in the mortar joints already? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you got to take a half a step back.
Yeah,
go ahead,
Steve. The thing that you're talking about is what I call the rate of decay, right? Like just like hazmat, with radiation. So it's the same thing on a building. Like we all drive by the same buildings in these stills every single day, and you start noticing that. Like all of a sudden, there's a crack. The crack gets bigger, or the roof has a hole in it, and then now there's a bigger hole, and then now the wall is a crack, and you start keeping an eye on certain buildings over the span of months and even years, and you start to really kind of get that sixth sense of like how fast those buildings are starting to really decay and become like that. Yeah. But some of them
stinking tired.
But you start to really get like if you don't do that, you're going into it with a big missing piece in the equation, right?
My thing is you're going into these already at such a disadvantage.
Right.
Because
already.
These layouts are so unique.
Sure.
you don't know what you're going to get, man. This is the Forrest Gump fire. You have no clue
no idea
what the layout of these things is.
And that's a whole other set of problems, right? And this all wraps back around to fires on main streets, right? These are small town departments, so typically they're understaffed, or just they're struggling to get 2 or 3 on a truck, if any on a truck. It may be purely POV response or volunteer. There's a building that they fight fire in, a type of building that they fight fire in not frequently, meaning once every couple years. And then
it's once every 10 years, or once every 15 years. That's really more realistic.
That is probably
in a smaller town.
Probably more realistic. And then now we throw all these essentially what would we call urban problems right at them, right? Like they're fighting an urban fire in a non-urban fire-based system, right? Environment. And how does anyone expect to come out, victorious with that? Which is kind of the whole reason. That's the whole point of this entire podcast and what we really teach on. So yeah, it sucks, right? Like the adversity is through the roof on these buildings. And Ohio is kind of interesting too, because you've already hit on it. You have people. Ohio is a lot more people in it than people realize. The population density in Ohio is much greater than, say, where we're at in Missouri. So what that equals is height. So where my main street buildings, there's a couple of them that are over 2 stories. Might be 1 or 2. Everything else is at least 2 stories. There's main streets all over Ohio that are in
3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5, and those are small towns that have that 3, 4.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm gonna kind of dive into that for a second, Chris.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's a common, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but it's a common thing I see when you're watching, your fire porn and you see Main Street USA burning, and I see a 3 or 4 or 5 story building, and they've got hand lines on the ground trying to put water into this building. Okay.
Yeah.
Like they've lost the building or they're trying to make an initial hit. It's been my experience when you get anything over 2 stories, when you're above 2 stories, you need an 80 PSI appliance.
Okay.
Whether that's a ram on the ground, whether it's a deck gun, you need the velocity to get the water there. Gravity's working against you. 1 and 2 stories, a 50 PSI appliance is fine. But we're trying to move big water that weighs a lot with 50 PSI, and it's not going to work. The weight of the water and the gravity is not going to allow that water to get where it needs to be. So when we get fires above 2, and you are putting water in from the outside, or you're trying to make an initial hit to get some time, to get some help, make sure it's an 80 PSI appliance, because you're not putting in water where you think it is actually. Anything above 2 should be an 80 PSI appliance.
Awesome. Once again, probably not in the books, right?
No, it's not. That's not in the books, I don't think.
Like good to know. And I mean, just think that's if we're, like you said, if we're talking some exterior time for some exterior water to buy us some time, or maybe you've gone to that defensive operation.
Maybe you're waiting on help. Maybe you're waiting on your second too.
Sure.
I think that's an absolutely viable option when you're short-staffed or you got one shot at it. Like, if this fire is showing, you're going to either hit it or you're not.
I've seen.
And what's the fastest water you can get on the fire?
The correct. It's interesting when we obviously keep tabs on Main Street fires in the country, and we do watch the videos when they're out, and it's insane to me how many times they show up to what should be a 1-line fire in their first. They're throwing deck guns at it, which you said, or an aerial device at the complete wrong angle. And what they do is they allow the fire to grow to then be that caliber of fire. But when initially they could have just stretched a hand line up some stairs and then put water on a 50-gallon fire.
Absolutely.
But and I get why it doesn't happen, because once again, we're in that Gordon Graham matrix of it's a high stress, low frequency event here. And that's really what our message out there is. It's like, look, there are things you can do, whether what you just said, right? Instead of raising an aerial pipe, a ladder pipe, and waiting for it to burn through the roof, hit it with a ram. Like, that's a word we don't talk about enough in the fire services, the ground monitor, right? The blitz device. those things can go inside too, especially on your large commercial buildings.
Absolutely. Yeah, those can go in. Not only can they go inside, they can go inside, number one, but number two, they can actually you can extend off of them.
Sure.
That's one of my go-tos. That's absolutely one of my go-tos in a lot of our warehouses. We'll stretch off with the ram and bring a couple hundred feet of 2-inch with us. And once, if I need 500 gallons a minute, it's sitting there. If I don't, what do? I spin the tip, hook on the 2.5, the 2-inch line, and we go to work with 240 gallons a minute. So I think that's an underused
big time
application of what we do. And I think that's it's definitely a thing for me that we teach that a lot. And I think it's a very important thing, Chris. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially in smaller towns, think about your taxpayers that maybe have like a first floor where it's flipped, or sometimes they'll have a second floor dance floor, or maybe even a third floor like dance hall or like a Legion hall. So instead of that being on the first floor with it being cut up on the second floor, it's upside down essentially. So the first floor is all cut up because you say it's like a flea market or an antique shop, has little tiny nooks and crannies in it, but then the second floor is wide open. Like that would be a perfect situation right there to where you can get that ground monitor to the second floor entrance to the landing. You're making a half of one turn, and you have the whole sweep of the floor.
Boatload of water.
Yeah, a boatload of water.
Boatload of water to get it done.
The whole sweep of the floor, and then where's your pressure going? Like where's the pressure wave? The products of extinguishment, they're not going into the building like you would with a deck gun, or like what would happen if you had that flowing from the street. Well, they're going out the front of the building, out the windows. So, and then once again, you're holding stairs, and then plus if it's a third floor above that, well, now you're putting water in between the fire and the exposure of the third floor. So like win-win-win, right? I mean, there's so many options there that people don't realize that are the better option. I think they just don't even know that there's a play in the book for these buildings in a lot of ways. So that kind of brings me to the next conversation we want to talk about is the well holes and well hole stretching in these 3 and 4 story Main Street buildings. That's something that is definitely an urban tactic that you never see smaller departments taking the time to learn how to do. So what are some tips on that?
First of all, before you go that far, for people who don't know, explain what that is exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I was really blessed. I learned, in my opinion, from the best in the world, and that's the FD&Y. The FD&Y well hole stretch is better than anybody in the world for one reason. They do it more than anybody in the world. I've been blessed to have Ray McCormick as a mentor for a long time, and Ray and Tim Klatt, Jimmy Smith from Squad 41. I mean, these guys are just unbelievably good at this. And their knowledge of well holes is just second to none. Now, what we've done is with the Mid-Rise Mayhem class is we've taken all their tips that they gave us and basically just dove deeper into each little one of them, right? Mm-hmm. But the big thing about well holes that I can tell you is it's not as hard. It's intimidating to go vertical, but it's really not hard to go vertical. And it's going to be much faster than hooking to a standpipe. I get into argument all the time about line selection with chiefs, and they say, well, there's a standpipe, you need to stretch at 2.5. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's talk about that, because my thing with that is you have a 1,200 square foot house, okay, 1,600 square foot house, right?
Yep.
Lex, Chris. Yeah. So what size 1 3/4, if that's half involved, are you taking in there? 3/4 involved. 7/8 tip, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to give you enough water.
160 gallons a minute. You walk in the front door, you walk out the back. Do you do that on a regular basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
not a thing. So now you're telling me because I'm on the third floor and there's 800 square feet of fire or 600 square feet of fire in this one apartment that I need
a bigger line.
More than 2 times the water.
Right. At the expense of
maneuverability.
At the expense of maneuverability and manpower.
Well, not only that, let's talk about water weight. That's why I'm a huge fan of 2-inch if I need that.
Mm-hmm.
You look at 2-inch versus 2.5. 200 feet of 2-inch hose weighs 266 pounds just in water weight, okay?
Mm-hmm.
266 in water weight and 200 feet. That's not hose weight. That's not nozzle weight. I like the 1 1/16 on it. 1 1/16 tip gives you 240 at 50. So 240 gallons a minute's a lot of water. 87 pounds nozzle reaction there. Let's look at 200 feet at 2.5. 200 feet at 2.5 weighs 434 pounds just in water weight. Just in water weight. 1 1/8 tip, 266. We all know that. 98 pounds nozzle reaction. So if I just take that 2-inch, I'm going to lose 168 pounds of water weight.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that helps with maneuverability?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right. Yeah, think about how many turns you
and I'm
make with
dropping
that.
11 pounds nozzle reaction. So which are you going to actually leave open longer?
The smaller line, I mean, the lighter line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, how many people have you seen flow a 2.5-inch line for 1 minute straight without shutting it off?
Yeah, exactly. Who practices that on the hose drill day, in the fire
But I'm
cabinet?
just saying, like, who does, like, you watch every video, they're going to open it. It'll be open for 10 to 15 seconds.
And
Then they half
shut
bail it.
Yeah.
Then they adjust. Then they
Yeah.
open it. Then they half bail it. Right?
Hey,
So
well,
in other words, getting 1 3/4 water, dragging around 2.5-inch water weight.
Right.
Right.
And once again, that is also an immediately fixed with what we just talked about, a ground monitor, a little mobile freaking ground monitor. If you really need that big water without those big water problems, that thing just fixes all that right there. But
And that's where, if you have bundle, like everything I run on my engine is in a bundle.
sure.
I can do anything I want to do with that. I can do a coupling drop. I can add 3 links or 3 bundles and have 300 feet. I can add a 4th bundle for 400 feet. Whatever I need to do, I can maneuver off that. I can do coupling drops with it, right?
Yeah.
Got to work. The advantage, back to well holes, I kind of got in a
Wormhole, well hole.
Yes, that too. Back to the well hole, though. The big advantage of a well hole stretch is you're bringing your working length with you.
Right.
Yep.
There's 2 different parts to that. There's the working length and the travel length. And one thing I think people don't understand, it doesn't take as much hose as you think. You figure roughly 10 feet per floor, right? If I'm going 3 stories, 4 stories, that's one length. Big thing is get that preloaded. Unless you have somebody standing down there, which most of us don't have the bodies to do, you have to preload that travel length at the base of the well.
Okay.
If you don't do that and you start up, your couplings, your hose, everything's either going to catch the treads of the stairs underneath or it's going to catch the door frame.
Okay.
So preload that. So you figure 40 feet if we're going 4 stories. One length. Now, if you got return stairs, maybe this well hole won't allow you. 1 fist is what you need to go vertical through the well hole.
Correct.
If your fist can fit through there, it's going to work just fine.
Yep.
If you do that and say the well hole won't accept the line, it's too tight. If I've actually got to go around the return stairs, you need to double the height of the stretch.
Okay.
Double the height of the stretch if I've actually got to use the return. So if I'm going 40 feet vertically, 1 length, what is it going to be 4 stories if I got to use the return stairs?
80.
It's going to be 80.
Yeah.
So I go from 1 length of hose to what?
2.
That's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a very big deal. So these little nuggets are they're little. They don't sound as important as they really are to make the stretch come out well in a well hole. Does that make sense?
Sure. So now my question on well holes. So, I mean, I'm sure the Midwest, we're all familiar with like a skid load, right?
Yeah.
Off the back of a truck. Now, explain what that looks like in the context of, because we're talking, rural departments here and they all run skid loads. So what does that look like in the context of a well hole stretch?
Well, I mean, basically one of 2 things is going to happen. The big key I've got from guys like Ray and Tim and Jimmy is, try to have that working length on the outside shoulder or in the outside hand. That way that inside hand can guide the line into the well.
Mm-hmm.
And your working length's going to vary. Like, what do I need? Is it 2 apartments down? Is it 3 apartments down? Am I going to need 1 length? Am I going to need 2 lengths? That's where when I bring 100 feet up every time at least,
I have my midpoints marked, and we basically split it in the well. So that gives me 100-foot working length. If I know I've got that mid-rise or that, even like you said, that Main Street USA, some of those buildings have 200-foot hallways.
Oh yeah. So, and that's the thing is the hotels usually have a grand open stairwell up to like a mezzanine, and then it's an open stairwell on like 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, you'd be doing like a well stretch off like what essentially would be like floor 2, because you have that like atrium you walk in, and then so you're doing like a kind of a hybrid thing, and then you have those long.
To say there that you can't take the first travel length with you,
right?
And do a coupling drop.
Sure, yeah. So a coupling drop would be another one, yeah.
That's where, again, you just have to get in the buildings and solve problems. What are we going to do with this?
So how, kind of on that discussion, is that something that you've developed with your crew, like a standard you've set, or have you got, are you drawing guys in that want that, or like kind of how did you develop that with your guys?
My thing is, I ask them questions. We're on an EMS run. We're going on a medical alarm or something crazy in a mid-rise or on OSU, and they're cleaning the kid. His kid's laying in his own puke, and they're picking him up. Where do you think I am?
I'm wandering around.
I'm wandering around. I'm looking at the well hole. I'm looking at how long it is from the elevator lobby to the well. Can it accept a well hole stretch? Where does it dump?
Sure.
Right. I'll walk down these stairs and see where the exits are. Because can I position my truck close to that door, that exterior door, and I'm stretching a pre-connect up there?
Yep.
Is that doable? Yes, that's very doable. Absolutely, it's very doable.
And I tell you what, Steve, this is something that you taught us that we teach everyone else is never waste a run, right? Never waste a run.
I even took it a step farther, Chris. I for $30 on Amazon, I got one of the laser measures that measures distance.
Yeah.
Because I'm old and I'm fat, and I don't like to, God, don't waste heartbeats, But I'll go to the elevator lobby and shoot back to the stairwell. And then we have a really good fire alarm office. So there's a form I can fill out when I get back to the firehouse. And that form I can just put, if I want to put additional remarks on the card that shows up on the computer, 2 links, 4 links from the elevator lobby to stairwell.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to have.
You see what I'm saying? We'll take a stairwell stretch. 2 wells, 1 exits on the Bravo side, 1 exits on the Delta side, or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's whatever information you can gather ahead. And I pull up to that building and fire's blowing out of 4. And I see it's close to the middle of the building. I know I'm going to need 4 links to get to the middle.
Sure.
How much reflex time am I cutting there knowing I'm taking an extra bundle and putting 200 feet on the fire floor?
Right. Yeah. Instead of guys getting up there and screaming, like you said, in a dirty hallway that they need more line.
Yeah, and it's not going to go well. And most of the time, and especially if you're talking the old hotels or the old buildings downtown.
Yeah. And
if you make that mistake and come up short, I'm going to say 98, 99% of the time, you're going to burn the damn roof off.
Yeah, and that's the thing that leads us.
You're going to burn the roof off of it, because as soon as it gets in that common cockcloth, which way is it going?
Right, everywhere. Both ways.
Going both directions, and you're not going to catch it.
And so that's the thing, Steve, is so that brings us to our next subject here is cockcloth, so what could absolutely be its own episode. What do you guys have? Do you have actual like cockcloth nozzles in Columbus, or what's your go-to plan for that? I have to cut that out.
This is a pretty technical answer. Are you ready?
Sure.
Hook and water.
Hooks and water. Yep.
It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing what hooks and water can do. But I don't think the fire service is as aggressive as we used to be with hooks and water. And I think this is sometimes it's a chief issue that as soon as they see a little fire coming out of the roof, what do you think we got to do?
Oh, yeah, we got to get to the building. Yep, got to evacuate the building.
But not only that, but we got to open the big guns, right?
Sure.
We got to get the water flow on that. Well, hold on a second. It's okay. But I like a 2-line approach to this. And, apartments are different than what we're talking about. I mean, to me, apartments are a little different. When it's coming from apartments, I look at it two ways. On an apartment fire, if it's a common hallway, it's in the attic. I come from the unburned side with two lines and open up two trusses at a time and just start flowing water and leapfrog right down the hallway.
Okay.
And a 2-line push if you got a really good truck company or a decent truck company that'll open holes, I stop and flow water, take as steep as angle as you can up into that attic space. And then the truck and the next line move forward, 10, 20 feet. What do? They open up another 2 truss spaces. What's that guy do now? He opens up, takes a steep angle. What's the first line do? It goes right past them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, just leapfrogs.
And you leapfrog your way right down. The reason being, if you come from the fire side, you're going to chase and chase and chase, and you're never going to get ahead of it.
Sure.
You got to come back to it and cut it off. And with a line flowing, it's not going to pass you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like you say, we watch a lot of videos online. In the Midwest, it just seems like just coming up through the fire service in the Midwest, hooking ceiling, that's more of an overhaul thing. But when do we normally do overhaul? We do overhaul after the fire is out. So it's kind of this like lackadaisical, don't really know if you're doing a good job at it because there's not really any high stakes involved. And then you have a cockloft fire, which is essentially you need proactive. You're overhauling to fight the fire. So that kind of flips a script on that pace and culture of overhaul, your attitude. And I think that just throws so many people off kilter, especially departments that aren't going to fires regularly.
Well, that's our fault as a fire service, though, because that's the way we teach overhaul from the beginning.
Yeah, we cut corners from the beginning.
We teach overhaul by showing them some tools and saying this is how you check to make sure you got all the fire out, not explaining that sometimes that's how you get to the fire.
Well, and I think, again, that word aggressive, that forward thinking, that forward truck company, they're inside guys. They're that next group that's coming in with hooks ready to go to work. Mm-hmm. And to me, if you don't open that up, starting at the top of the stairs and take a look, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You've got to the first line has to get to the base of the fire, yes. But man, that second line, they have to start opening up quick. Or when it starts going both directions, I do like the cockloft nozzle. I really do. Especially, man, if you're short-staffed, you can do some damage with that thing.
Sure.
If you get a hole in the cockloft, you can do some damage with that line. And there's no nozzle reaction on it at all because it's equal and opposite reaction, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But both directions. If you haven't seen it, it's the Elkhart cockloft nozzle, or I don't know what they call it. I think it's a cockloft nozzle. That's what I've always called it.
Yeah.
But that thing's legit, 15 16ths on each side, and then it goes down to a ½ inch. You need distance, man, there it is. I think it's a valuable tool. Another thing I've seen done, short staffed, you've got fire burning through the roof a little bit. I've seen guys take a 20-foot piece of 2.5 and put a Bresnan on it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Drop the Bresnan in the cockloft, and I've seen that do absolute wonders. It actually does really, really, really well. And that buys you some time because you're looking, that's a lot of water. It's over 325 gallons a minute, depending at 80 PSI. It's a lot of water.
So I like that for especially the departments that, they're like I said, they're slower. This is like you said, a once in a 5-year fire, maybe once in a 10-year fire. The Bresnan distributor from above allows these departments to not put boots on the roof. And if they don't want to, they can do some of the stuff from an aerial or a bucket. Right, they can get up there.
Chris, everything we're talking about is not a traditional tactic.
Correct.
Right. So, like, our books are so outdated and bad that, and I hope IFST is not the sponsor of this, but
no,
I'm frustrated with our textbooks because what other profession do we know of that you go to school for, 240 hours or whatever the fire 2 is now, and then everything you just learned, forget it. Now we're going to teach you the job.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a divergence of material there.
Well, especially with this generation because they don't understand why. Like they get so frustrated by that. Like you taught me one thing and now exactly. I mean, yeah, me too. But like, how do you explain that? Like you said, what other career is that a legitimate way to learn?
Do you see electricians doing that?
No. Doctors,
I mean,
yeah, like
plumbers.
no.
Come on. It's not. It just doesn't make sense to me. But that's a whole other.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other.
That's a different rabbit hole.
Yeah, whole other rabbit hole. So
I guess where I'm going with that is I would love to see the small to mid-sized fire departments start looking at alternative tactics other than classical textbook tactics, because there's a lot of things we can do, like a well hole stretch and vertical stretching isn't even mentioned in the book that I know of.
Right.
Maybe it is now.
I'm not even sure. So the Bresner distributor might be listed under like the nozzles chapter, but it doesn't explain when to use it, why to use it, what it's for, why the orifices on it are pointed in different directions for the joist voids. You know what I mean? So all that. And then here's another one, Steve. What about the piercing nozzle, the old Oklahoma Spike?
Yeah. You know what? We've got 32 truck. They carry a piercing nozzle in their bucket. They have a ton of apartments.
Yeah.
They have a piercing nozzle and a Bresnet in their bucket. And those guys, I'm telling you, they put out a boatload of fire with that thing in attics.
Sure.
Punch it, open it, and then start cutting.
Yeah.
That's what they do. I mean, they really they do a good job with it, because the majority of their work's apartment buildings.
Okay.
So they get to it, and they're aggressive with it, and it works. It works. They do a really good job with it.
So, but yeah, I mean, to your point, right? Those that are hook and ladders carry the piercing nozzle still. Our engine companies still carry the Bresnans, but the thing is how much of the volunteer fire service carries those things, or the small town or mid-size towns.
I bet you they all have them. They
don't know what they're for.
Yeah, right. I mean,
if they know what they're for, they say that's for a basement fire.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a cellar nozzle. It can only be for cellars, right? Like, why would we take that?
Like the R.A. Baker cellar nozzle. It's an elbow. It's got a Bresnan basically on the bottom of it. What's it do?
Sure.
It's got two wings. That you cut a hole, chop a hole in the floor, drop this thing in.
Yep.
Put the arms out. Like,
right.
That was in my dad's T&I manual in the 60s. Right. Like, I still got my dad's books when he went to school, and I'm reading this stuff, and a lot of this stuff is still the exact same wording as it was in the 60s. And is that necessarily correct? Not saying it's all wrong, but they're using the same exact verbiage.
Right.
And I would sure as hell hope we've learned something since the 60s to provide a little better information on proper use and tactical applications.
Yeah, I think some of that goes to, though, if it worked then, right? They're still talking about it in the 60s, and it's some of that stuff. I think dependability, that's a product of just the fact that it is so dependable and it was so effective. So, I'm not saying don't take what they did as factual. That's not, because a lot of the tactics, man. A quick fire story. I had Captain Jerry Ruby. Jerry Ruby was a bad dude. Just a tough as nails old captain when I got on the job. We had a fire on Blueberry Street. I was on the back step, engine 2. And snotty first floor, couldn't see nothing. I'm on the nozzle. And I don't know if anybody out there's ever been on the nozzle and could not find the fire. Does that ever happen to either of you? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's getting hotter and blacker, and it's just not going well for me. He taps me on the butt. He says, "Kid, are we going to put this thing out?" And I said, "Cap, I can't find the fire." He started giggling. I can tell you, I didn't think it was near as funny as he did. And he said, "Put your face on the floor." I made mistake number 2. I said, "What?" So guess what he did?
Put your face on the floor.
He put my face on the floor. He goes, "Put your light to your face." And I did. He goes, "Which way's the smoke moving?" I said, "To my right." He said, "Turn to your right." The fire was right there.
Right there, yeah. Yeah.
So we're sitting on the bumper after the job, and I said, "Cap, how did you know that?" Now, he retired in 94. He said, "An old guy taught me when I got on the job." So he got on the job after Vietnam, right? And he's like, an old guy taught him. So how long has FlowPath been around and didn't have a cool name?
Oh, dude, I mean, I can go way back in the way back.
I mean, that's kind of the story. That's kind of where I'm going with this is follow the smoke in the low pressure zone, down low. You actually have to get on the ground, guys. I know that's a new tactic and thought. And I don't know what's going on in the fire service, but everybody thinks they need to walk.
Well, SCBAs is what happened, Steve. That's exactly what happened.
But if you get on the ground and get your face on the ground, it's a huge advantage to you to tell you where the fire is. You lose your camera, whatever. The point I'm making is a lot of that old material is absolutely pertinent today. The point I'm making is a lot of the materials have not expanded on uses that they laid great groundwork for tactically. We haven't expanded that of other things we can use the same appliance for. Does that kind of wrap up where I was going with that? Like, it's all pertinent material. It's all important, but we haven't expanded to where we can go beyond that with it.
So, I mean, and you can even say like thermal imager cameras, all this new technology, which are great things. SCBA's amazing things, right? We can go farther than ever before and make rescues, but it all comes at an expense of those things that you're talking about just now, right? You know, you can't see which way necessarily the smoke is moving with the thermal imager camera. I mean, you might be able to see a little bit of flow path going on there, some of the convection currents, but how many people are even taking the time to think about that if they all they know is what's on this camera and the colors?
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, another thing about technology though, another one of my screw ups. This was years ago. We had the ISGs, those big bricks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, those things were huge. We had a warehouse fire, and Lieutenant Bill Ross, another mentor, great guy, teaches with my cadre at Stretching for Success, 35, 36 years on the job. Him and he was on the engine, I was on the heavy rescue. So I was still a fireman, and we go in, and I had the camera. The rescue had the tick, right? It was the only one that we had in the whole firehouse. The rescues and the truck companies were just starting to get them, but they didn't have them yet. So I take this camera in. Of course, I checked it in the morning. Everything's good. We're cruising, man. We're cruising through this warehouse. I got this camera. We're hauling ass. And the fire's toward the front of the warehouse. We're moving. And all of a sudden, the camera goes, whoop, whoop, whoop. It's dead.
It's dead. Now what? Yeah.
I said, Billy, you got your rope? And he goes, no, I thought you had one.
Oh, boy.
Now, we had 30-minute MSA, small MSA cylinders back then. And we're looking at each other. And I said, man, we really screwed it. We had no idea, Chris, where we were in the middle of this warehouse.
Man, that's not a good feeling.
Construction warehouse that was like that had the orange barrels and the lights that are blinking. So it was just enough of those lights blinking to really screw you up because they were everywhere. You know what I mean? In the smoke. So you really had no focal point. Thank goodness we heard engine 14 in the front throwing water. Okay. I said, Billy, somebody's throwing water. He goes, yeah, let's go that way. And we got absolutely lucky. We were just dumb-ass luck that 14 was throwing water, and we heard it, and were able to make our way that way before we ran out of air. But we made a mistake. That same mistake could have cost us our lives, and it would have been nobody's fault but ours, right? We relied too much on the technology, right? And that's a mistake I won't make again, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's across the board for everything that has progressed in the fire service, whether it's, you know, SCBA to thermal. I mean, you never have to worry about running out of air if you never took air to run out with, right? Like that even goes to that argument there.
Even so much as like now people don't pay attention to how much air they're consuming. They just wait for their low air alarm to go off, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, you look back, Mike Gagliano and Phil Josie and those guys did some great stuff years ago on air management, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of taken a back seat. Like
that book is so thick with so much good information in it, and no one's read it.
I read it, and it is. It's got a lot of really good information in it. And I'm not going to lie. Like, when I'm in a dwelling, I don't pay as much of attention. As soon as we cross the threshold into a taxpayer, a mid-rise, a warehouse.
Oh, yeah.
Anything bigger than a dwelling, man, you better be squared away.
Sure.
You either need to have a hand line or you need to have a rope. And there's no other option. It's not, well, I might bring a rope. No. If you have any thought, drop the rope, you know.
Absolutely.
And Mike Champo told me this. He got tangled up in a rope once. Never tie the rope to yourself. Always have, you know, like the rope bags with the seatbelts. Have that seatbelt clip in front of you. If you get tangled in something, you can push that seatbelt, get rid of it.
Yeah.
So if you don't manage the rope's going to manage you. And I think that's another thing that we don't practice is rope management.
Oh no,
No, we do not.
not. I mean, large area search is a whole other can of worms.
But it's not even search. I'm talking just searching for fire.
Oh yeah, well,
Right? Like just the initial recon that I'm in an 800,000 square foot warehouse, or I'm in that hotel you're talking about that's got a 300-foot hallway that goes around in a square, right? And I'm trying to find the fire. How easy can you get turned around in that?
Oh, absolutely.
You damn well better have a rope.
Yeah, I mean, searching for a hidden fire like that's like, you know, smoke coming from everywhere, fire coming from nowhere kind of situation. Yep. That is the one to where I will start instead of looking the big picture, I'll start dialing in. I'll punch a hole in the wall and see if I have smoke coming out of that. You know, what's that doing coming out of that hole in the wall? If there's no smoke that comes out of that wall, well, all right, I can start to move on from there. That's one breadcrumb. You know, poke a hole in the ceiling. Do I got anything come out of the ceiling? That's one more breadcrumb. So,
and I want to add to that. That's great. That's an absolute great nugget, Chris. But make sure you do it as you go.
Sure, right, and that's what I would be doing. Yeah. So
man, I've seen
make sure you don't
happen.
go past anything burning. You know.
Yeah, because I've seen that happen in knee wall jobs a lot, where you'll keep pushing, and all of a sudden the truck behind you starts opening shit up, and then things go sideways.
See, right, like make sure you poke that.
Open up as you go.
The hole
Don't let anybody open behind you.
The hole in the wall goes at the bottom of the stairs before I climb the stairs. You know.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then you know, take it a step further, playing detective. What color is that smoke?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean everything smoke rating comes.
Brown smoke. What's that telling me?
Right. If it's
structural.
It's
right?
structural.
Like I've got something in the walls. I've got something somewhere that's structurally burning.
So
not contents.
So Steve, how many times have you had like upside down smoke to where you have something rocking on an upper floor or rocking in a cockloft or something, and it's pushed smoke down, and you poke a hole and the smoke comes out, and you're like, it'll be pushing out of outlets. It'll be pushing out like dry, like hot water heater connections.
But the other thing with that, Chris, is if you actually take a second and look at it, you're going to see it coming down.
Sure, and that's my point. That's my point right there. You can literally see the direction of smoke travel if you poke a hole in the wall.
Out the hole and go straight back up.
Right. So
and the other thing I think you need that the guys need to pay attention to when they open those walls up like that. What type of velocity is that smoke coming out?
Yep.
Because anytime there's velocity with smoke, that's energy.
Oh yeah.
Right. So is it lazy? Okay. Well, if it's lazy, that means I probably got some type of smoldering fire that it's just got everything completely full of smoke to where it has nowhere else to go.
Right. Just pushing it down.
If there's velocity to it, that's got energy behind it. And we've got a pretty good fire.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is we've all been there to where we have a moderate smoke condition on the lower floor, heavy smoke on the upper floor. I mean, has anyone been in the basement? Once that's ruled out, but then, like you said, we're about to go up, and then you see what you're talking about coming out of like an outlet or something, and you're like, it's fast and it's volatile, and you're like, man, it's going to be gross up there. You know, and you might as well just start calling for roof ventilation before the hose line gets, you know.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Is I think, you know, I think we're coming back a little bit, cutting holes, and
yeah,
you know,
I agree with that.
We on our dwellings, if it's in the attic or if it's in the knee wall, and as an engine officer, look, we're there alone a lot at my company just because we're a single engine house. I call for that hole as part of my rundown.
Cool.
And here's why. They're not just going to parlay their butts on that roof and cut a hole. It takes time.
It does.
But that means you need to position the first engine correctly to give them the front of the building to cut that reflex time, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not carrying ground ladders as far. If they got to use a ground ladder and a hook ladder, all these things take time. So, you know, 18's on the scene, 2.5-story frame, working fire. 13 truck, get to the roof. That's all I say. I don't need to say, I need a hole here, here, here. Guys, I think it's in the knee wall, get to the roof. If I get up there and I'm able to knock it out, what do I say? Hold off on the hole.
Right.
Is that a big deal?
No.
But we can't wait till we're on the top step trying to get in the attic.
Right, to be calling for it.
Trying to get in the cock loft and it's too damn hot and you can't move and then say, well, maybe we should cut a hole in the roof.
And
well, you're a little late.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, Steve, is so say you guys are getting you're at the bottom of the stairs to go to an upper floor, and it's pumping out of a pinhole or something in the wall there. What do you think is going to happen if they're already on the roof and they're making their cuts? What do you think is going to happen to that smoke coming out of that hole in the wall next to you? As soon as they pop that, you're gonna see an immediate change in that smoke coming out of that, and then you're gonna go game on. They got it.
You better have your boots up, laced up.
Absolutely.
Because your time frame that you're going to have to make a push on that is going to be minimal.
It's going to be right.
You're going to have to be ready to go.
Sure. So
especially in a cock loft.
And that's the give and the take.
If you don't have the resources right there ready to go, you better hold off because you're going to lose. You're going to lose very quickly.
Absolutely.
There's consequences for everything we do in life. Some good, some not so good. Ventilation is the same way. Like, I'm all about it. Because I've been on the other end of that line where they cut a hole in the knee wall or they cut their cock loft, and it just absolutely is game changer for us. But if you don't have that line in place ready to go, you better hold off because it's not going to wait on you.
And that's the big thing. I mean, that's the coordination factor behind coordinated ventilation, right? But that's the thing is you're taking a better condition of attack for the cost of lesser time to get water on the fire. So that's the give and the take behind that. You're not gonna have to push through some crap where you may not get to it, and so you're not going to be as dependent on that hole for your progress. But at the same time, like you just pointed out, that ain't the time to forget to check your nozzle, and then you open up the bail and you ain't got shit. Like that. That is not the time for that.
And here's the thing: it doesn't take 100 radio communications. If I hear the saws working above my head, what do I need to be ready to do?
Yeah,
guys,
let's go. Water.
Get ready.
Yeah,
get ready. Let's be ready to go as soon as they get it in. We're going to get the lift, and we got to go. Like, that doesn't take communication. That takes basic skills. And I tell guys, you got to learn to listen in a fire.
Big time.
Everything has unique sounds. The other thing about a warehouse, like, we got a little bit turned around, and I'm like, man, the smoke got bad quick, right? It was light smoke, and then it got worse. We got kind of turned around, and I said, everybody just listen. What did I hear? I heard the engine running outside. Does that make sense? Like
yeah.
You use everybody wants to see everything. Listen. If I put a nozzle against a wall, what kind of sound does that make? It's very loud, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I move that nozzle to the right and it hits inside a door, all of a sudden that changes to what?
Oh, it's totally different sound.
Right.
Windows, doors, yeah.
Windows, all of that. So what I'm saying is, when you're working the nozzle, it's not just about working this thing in circles. You have to be almost and Kyle Romigus, in my opinion, is the best nozzle instructor in the country. The guy is unbelievable. Blessed to have him on our cadre at mid-rise and stretching for success. But he's just so methodical on how he teaches it and the importance of listening, using your ears, and you're going to hear different things that are going to give you key points on whether you're making progress or you're not with that nozzle.
Yeah. I mean, think about where it's the hardest to hone that skill. Where do you think about it? A freaking metal Connex box. Everything is the same metal. Everything's the same sound.
When I'm teaching in those things, I wear earplugs. I mean, because it's very hard. It's very hard to teach that skill in that setting. Concrete's better, but it's not great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a big one right there, man. If you can flow water in some acquired structure, that is a game changer, right? Like, knowing the fact that you may have closed the door ahead of you with the hose stream, like, that changes up some stuff. You hear a door slamming that was, what did I just shut myself off from?
Exactly.
All that kind of stuff. Windows, holes in floors, do you have tin ceiling in front of you, or ahead of you? How high the ceilings are. I mean, there's so much you could talk about. Once again, like, that could be its own podcast of just reading the room with your water, which none of which you can do in a concrete or a metal Connex box. effectively enough to take that into a real building and think you're going to do it as good as you want. So, but anyway, Steve, I think we're going to wrap this up. This has been probably one of the most informative, insightful podcasts we've done in a long while. So I just wanted to thank you for your time. And I'll be listening to this one again because I guarantee I've already forgotten some stuff I want to remember that you talked about here. So other than that,
I appreciate you bringing me on. I love what you guys do, and I'm actually really looking forward to the research you're doing and getting that information, because I think you guys are onto something. It's going to be special when you put it out there. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're excited about that. They'll come out probably into late September. So we'll see. It's been the fire service is hard to get good info out of, just because I think everybody's afraid to say what they're doing. But we were able to reach out to guys like you and some other guys across the country. So hopefully we can put something out people can learn from. But
yeah, anyway, Steve, I know we always cross paths a couple times a year. And anytime we see our class, whatever it is, we always make an effort to be in it, because even though we've taken it over and over and over again,
you always learn something new.
Always learn something new from your material. And I think that is a huge lesson.
I don't think I've ever given the same program twice.
No, and so that's something that us as instructors don't ever, I think we don't tell people enough who are up and coming, in the pipeline there. Yeah, change it up. Don't ever teach the same thing twice.
Well, you're learning too, right? Like, you're still on the job, you're still working. So every time you're out, you pick up something new. So your class should be changing. You should be adding that stuff in.
Right. Like you don't want to be a one pony show, change the show. Right.
It's 30 plus years of my mistakes.
Right.
I still make mistakes on every fire.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a realist, but that's why we train. That's why we set our goals higher than the divisions. Because we know we're real. We shoot for one last thing here. We shoot for 60 seconds through the door at 18. Awesome. 60 seconds from the air brake, we're trying to get through that door. And why is that important? You look at the stuff Brush and those guys, J-Lo and those guys are doing with the firefighter rescue survey. I picked up a nugget out of the last firemanship when I was talking to J-Lo, and I'm like, 2 minutes to 6 minutes from time of arrival when we make a grab, 69% survival rate. That's pretty damn good, right?
Yep.
So if it takes me a minute to stretch the line, or a minute and a half, and 45 seconds to get dressed, and another 2 minutes to force the door, that's not acceptable. We're cutting into that time. So we broke it down and we said 20 seconds to stretch, 20 seconds to get dressed, 20 seconds to force the door. Is that realistic? Yes.
Yeah.
That is very realistic times that you can meet. Do we meet that every single time? No. But if we don't meet it, what do?
Go back and train on it.
We talk about it. Where did we fail? And what do? You train on it.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got to start being humble to ourselves in the job, that when we can't actually be critical of ourselves, good Lord, you're a human being. You're going to make mistakes. Be critical of yourself on the fire. You have to be.
Yeah.
That's what we get paid to do. And when you make a mistake, it's not the end of the day. What do you need to do? Own it.
Yeah. Accept it.
Train on it and move on, and don't make the same damn mistake twice. That's the key.
Yep.
I think it's awesome, Steve. I think it's awesome that you come up with benchmarks, which eventually sets a standard. I think that's great. That's just another hallmark of a high performing, company officer.
Chris, that's the first thing we do. If you get assigned to 18s, or you come to 18s transferred, I don't care how much time you got on, you're going to get dressed in 20 seconds.
It's good.
And you're not going to pay for it till you do, because guess what? We're going to leave you on the front porch and you're no good to the company. Till you can get dressed, there's no reason for me to start teaching you how to stretch.
Right.
Yep.
So that's just where that's ground zero. And we all do it. So when they see that everybody's doing it, we're not picking on anybody, but the whole company does it first and then they do it. So it's like it builds, and it starts building trust when you do that, right?
And you're doing it, right? You're not holding.
Yeah, and when we go stretch, I stretch first.
Yep.
Why?
Yeah.
This is my expectation of how I want this done.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't hold anyone to a standard that you're not meeting. So.
Well, not only that, but you can't. I can't hand you a sheet of paper with my expectations. That's the biggest freaking cop out I've ever seen of a company officer.
Right.
Chief.
Yeah.
Well, Chief, I gave them my expectations. Yeah, but did you go through it with them to ensure they can meet it?
Right.
Sure.
Or to
Like,
even
you hand them
explain
a piece
why
of
that your
paper
standards are the way they are.
That doesn't do a damn thing for you handing somebody a sheet of paper. All that is a cop out when they screw up that you told them.
Yep.
Well, that doesn't mean you're setting them up for failure, not success.
Yep.
And that's not a good boss.
Yeah. Steve, have you ever taught anything in the leadership realm of engine company operations? You might want to dabble in that sometime.
I never have. I stick to my hose of water, buddy. There's a lot of really good leadership.
You might have a good path.
That's why that was a test you passed. That's why you're the most qualified to teach that. So,
I dabble in accountability stuff a little bit, but other than that, that's about it. The mid-rise stuff, we're really. I do want to hit on that real quick, Chris. I'm sorry I'm running over here, but
you're good. You're good.
There's no over. It's just what people want to listen to. So there's no over.
We are really, really, really excited about this. Clyde Gordon from Houston, Jimmy Davis from Chicago, Clark Lamping, Todd Edwards from Atlanta, Clark out from Vegas, and there's a good handful of us that are really diving into this thing deep. Ray McCormick's with us. Kyle Robigus, Anthony Rolex. We got a very diverse group of guys, and we're really hitting this stuff hard because, again, Main Street USA, right? Guess what Main Street USA is turning into?
Mid-rise.
To 3 and 4 story mid-rises.
Yep.
You got podium on the bottom, 3 to 5 platform above it, and we're trying to treat them like high rises, and they're just not.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere, Steve.
We're getting some more.
They're wrapping our firehouse in one of them right now. I'll send you a picture. It'll blow your mind.
And we're still learning on these things too, right? So we've given that program 3 times now. It's good Lord. The first time we did Orlando, it sold out in 5 minutes, and we just had people going, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is what we need." And so. If you see the program out there, I know we're talking about doing a weekly scrap, a mega scrap with Corley on a mid-rise mayhem mega scrap. So there's going to be more information out there. Look for the program. It's booking pretty heavy right now for 25. So
cool.
We're excited to bring that information out because I think it could be a game changer for a lot of jobs.
It's definitely going to be useful for us. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's big or small. Like it doesn't matter. Like I was in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, population of 2,500, and we started talking about this a little bit. And guess what? Broken Bow's like, yeah, we don't have any of those. As I'm driving back to Dallas, 4 hours back to Dallas to get on a plane, I look, and there's 4 4-story mid-rises going up. And guess what happened a month later?
Put them out
under
there.
Construction, they burn them all down because they fire under construction, and it's something, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have any. Yes, you do.
Just wait, they're coming.
Yeah, they're there. They're here. Like it's everywhere. But it's a whole other program. Thank you again. I'll shut up now.
No, you're good. We really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be hitting you up for another conversation because we could keep going. That's for sure. If somebody wanted to find you online to find that program and your other stuff, Steve Robertson and Stretching for Success, right?
Yep, Stretching for Success on Facebook, CFD Robertson on Instagram and Twitter, X or whatever you call it now.
Yep.
But yeah, just I tell everybody, I'm getting a lot of friends requests on Facebook. I'm at 5,000, so I can't take anymore. So follow the Stretching for Success page. I got videos on there, all the stuff. When we're going to be somewhere, we put it up there. But like I said, we're super excited. We're doing the program in Fort Lauderdale this year in October, the Fort Lauderdale Fire Conference. I think we're going to be back with Orlando Fire Conference again this year in February. We're in Huntsville, Alabama this year. We're doing Jacksonville, Florida. So it's really, I think we found a niche here that the fire service definitely needs.
Sounds like it. Well, we'll look forward to seeing it, and hopefully we'll see you out there somewhere soon.
Absolutely, guys. Appreciate you having me. Stay safe.
Thanks, you. Steve. You too. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Main Street Firefighting, a podcast by Fire Engineering. We hope it was worth your time. As always, if there's a topic you'd like to learn more on or a Main Street fire you'd like to discuss, please reach out. Until then, stay safe and have a good night.